It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Professor Max Peisach. We're here in your beautiful home in Beersheba in Israel. And Max, you were born in Lithuania, in Beersheba, and the Jewish name for the town was?
The Jewish population in the town called the town Birj.
And what year were you born, Max?
1926.
1926, and you came to South Africa, and you...
I was 6-year-old when I came here.
Wow.
To South Africa.
And you still remember the town? You still remember the
I remember the town, I remember where we lived, I remember the railway station that we went to.
And you were only 6 when you were there, but you still remember?
Well, my brother was 4.
And how was what you remember? What do you recall from the town in Lithuania?
What I recall is mainly the old new area of the town where we lived. But I remember going off to one day when I was 3 years old. I remember this very well. I disappeared from home. I had a little bag which had a sandwich in it, and I was going to school. Nobody knew where I was. They just disappeared in town. They had the police out looking for me. And I was walking along the main road, and I was going to school. They found me in the town. I was actually almost at the school when they found me.
And why did your family leave to go to South Africa?
My father was a genius. His business was one of the big businesses in Lithuania. We were very, very wealthy in Lithuania.
What type of business did he have?
I don't know, but it was dealing with the whole part of Central and West Europe. And he was the only car in the town except for the mayor.
Wow.
The mayor's car was there, but my father had a new car every year. And he traveled by car in that part of Europe. And he had contacts with all the major dealers and business areas in Central Europe. And he turned around in 1929. And he said to my mother, I'm going to South Africa.
This was what you had left in 26?
I was 3 years old when he left.
Wow.
My mother, my brother and myself were left in Europe.
He went by himself?
He went by himself. And he came to South Africa to get a job, and he didn't get a job, he got a job in the Namaqualand. And in the end he decided to start his own little business, and it was a flop to start with, and it took a long time to develop. It wasn't very pleasant. But that's beside the point.
Well, why did he decide to leave?
Because he turned around and said it would be, he spoke to my mother, I was there when he spoke to him. He said to my mother, Sonja, es wird brennen.
It's going to burn.
That's when he spoke about Europe. He said, es wird brennen. And he's going. And he's going, and he sent money from, he got a small job in South Africa at £3 a month. But they were gold sovereigns. And those gold sovereigns were worth 20 or 30 pounds by the time they came to Europe. So every month, from his salary, he took a gold sovereign, put it in the spine of a book, and sent it by post to my mother. My mother would tear off the spine of the book and take out the pound and live for it for a month. That's how he managed the affairs while he was in South Africa. I remember, not only do I remember South Africa, I remember the trip back from Lithuania to South Africa, 1932.
You lived in 1932?
It was 1932, early in the year. Our train went from Lithuania to central Germany. And from Germany, our carriage was disconnected and put onto the carriage going to Belgium. And from Belgium, we took a road across to England. And from England, we went down to Southampton, took the boat from there to Cape Town.
And you remember this?
Everything. I was there with my brother.
And your mother?
Yes, I was 6 years. I turned 6 out on board ship.
Wow.
Well, that didn't tell me a funny thing. I walked down into the lounge, breakfast. I'm going to have breakfast on board ship. Board ship was 24 days trip. In those days, from England to 24, 2 weeks. No, 14 days.
14 days.
It was from London to Cape Town. And I went down to lunch as usual, and dressed with all sorts of decorations in the room, and it was my birthday. I turned down to my mum and I said, "How did the captain know it was my birthday? Did you tell the captain that it was my birthday?" It turned out it wasn't that. We were crossing the equator. Wow. That was why the ship had all that to do. So I know where I was on my 6th birthday. I was crossing the equator.
It's amazing. And Max, the rest of your family, did they stay behind in Lithuania? Or
no.
Like grandparents?
Before my father left, he sent out all those of his brothers and sisters who were old enough. He sent them out to Europe.
How old was Harry?
Hey?
Harry was 4.
Harry was 4 and I was 6 when we on board ship.
And was it difficult to leave? Do you remember leaving your home?
I didn't know anything. I just know where we went. I remember where we lived and how we lived and all that sort of thing.
What about your grandparents?
My grandparents had their own big building in the town of Beers. We lived on the new area of Beers. It was sort of out of the business area.
Did they also join you? Did they also join you going to South Africa?
They knew that my father was going to South Africa, but they said no, they're quite happy to live there. My father said, but it's Red Brennan. He didn't listen to them. He stayed there and they were killed.
They were killed in the Shire a few years later.
Yes.
So your father had the
My father is a genius. He was an absolute genius.
He could see what was going to happen.
Not only, well, first of all, he was dealing with the right people in Europe, and he knew all the time. He had contact with all the main people in the whole of Western Europe. It was Eastern Europe. It's the Central and Eastern Europe was his business area.
Did he try to warn other people that they should try to leave?
Only the Jewish people. He didn't talk to the others.
But he did try to warn.
Yes, and some people took his advice and left. They left the country. But at that time, the Jews were living well. We were rich in Lithuania.
It must have been very, very difficult. It's not as simple to
It wasn't difficult. It was difficult for him to give up all his powers, his financial powers and everything. He left it in Europe.
And to learn a new language?
No, he learned English before leaving. He was learning English before leaving because his business has progressed by talking English to them.
Did you know a little bit of English?
Nothing.
And you used to speak just in Yiddish?
I used to speak in Yiddish and in Lithuanian, but nobody in South Africa knew Lithuanian.
But you learned Hebrew?
I learned only not
your parents.
In Hebrew. I learned in South Africa.
And what did your mum speak when she was on board ship?
My mother spoke Russian.
Russian, and could you speak a bit of Russian as well?
Not at all.
Eunice, it's nice to see you as well, Eunice.
They didn't speak to me in Russian. They spoke to me in Yiddish.
And I know you were only 6, but did you go to a Jewish kindergarten or a...
No, I wanted to, but they prevented me from going. They said, "You're too young." I was 3 years old when I went.
Wow.
I took a bag and I put a sandwich in it, and I walked in this little bag, and I was walking off the street like all the other children. I saw all the other children were doing the same, so I went and followed them.
Your husband, Eunice. And Max, can I just ask, did you have any other friends? Do you remember having any other friends in the town?
I can't remember that.
It's a long time ago.
No, look, most of the time in Europe I was a baby.
Yeah.
I wasn't school age yet. It was only when my father left that I was already turning to be
Was it difficult to see your father go? Do you remember when he
I don't
left?
remember him going. I remember that he left because my mother was sending letters to him.
And do you remember when you saw your father when you came to Cape
Of
Town?
course, I remember my father well. He came to the boat to meet us.
How many years had you been apart? It's about 3
Oh,
years.
not long, not long. I was 6 when I left. My father left when I was 4.
So it's about 2 years. But that encounter when he came to the boat, it must have been very emotional.
It was delightful. I just jumped into his arms. I remember that. But the point is that I went to school immediately, and I couldn't speak a word of English or Afrikaans. And this was Cape Town.
What did you say when you came home?
The first thing I said when I came home was, "Open the door." It was English. My first phrase of English that I spoke to my mother.
Open the doors. And you stayed in Cape Town?
We moved around. My father's business was in Stellenbosch.
What type of business did your father do?
Groceries, what could he do? He didn't have any of the language arrangements which he had in Europe. In Europe he spoke to them in their languages. But in South Africa it didn't work.
And you remember which towns you stayed in?
Yes, I remember where we stayed. We stayed in, first of all, when we came there, we moved to a little village outside Stellenbosch. And my father had opened a shop in Stellenbosch, in that little area. It was called the Toy Station. It still is called the Toy Station. And we stayed there for going on for a year. And the business didn't go well, and no one moved the business to Stellenbosch. And he found residence for us in Stellenbosch, and I started going to school in Stellenbosch.
And in Stellenbosch, was there a little Jewish community that you...
Yes, there was at the time. Small, but I wasn't involved. No, I was...
You went to public school?
Of course I went. At my age, in kindergarten age, you go to the girls' school. So I am an old boy from the Rhenish Girls High in Stellenbosch. Rhenish Girls High. I'm an old boy there. I went there for my early years.
And you picked up the language quickly?
Of course, at that age, you pick it up very quickly. You forget everything else. I forgot my Lithuanian. I used to speak Lithuanian like a yoke. I don't remember a word now.
Because you didn't speak it.
I didn't see any Lithuanians where I was.
And
how did your mother manage?
Badly, to start with.
Eunice, if you could take a seat, it's nice if you sit next to...
Yeah.
If you could sit next to Max.
No, I don't want to be in any photograph.
But it's true. How did your mother manage? It must have been very hard for her.
To start with was very hard, but gradually she picked up the language and she started speaking to them in Afrikaans, and it was okay.
And you had other relatives staying also in Cape Town?
No, maybe we did, but I didn't know about them. As far as I was concerned, the only people I knew was my father and mother.
And Max, did you manage to make friends easily?
Well, ultimately, yes. Ultimately, I became an active man at school. I went to school in Worcester. And there I was top boy in school all the time, all the way through. From the first year I was right through to matric. I was always in the top.
And did your family keep the customs, Shabbat or the festivals?
Very difficult because the main businesses were Shabbos. But they only had it open in the morning. The business open in the morning. In the afternoon they closed the shop.
But like Passover you'd keep and...
Oh yes, Chagim and all that sort of way. They went to shul in Worcester. Worcester shul was a big shul. It was so big that there wasn't a seat for me in the shul.
What are you saying?
All the seats were taken, and I wanted to sit next to my father. I said, no good, you can't. You've got to sit where the kids sit.
And your bar mitzvah you had in...
I remember in Worcester. All in Worcester.
So you were there till you matriculated?
Yes. I matriculated from Worcester.
And did you play sports? Did you become very...
No, that was my brother's branch. My brother was a sportsman. I was a businessman. I had to help my parents in the shop.
You had to help your parents.
Yeah, I worked with my father.
And at that age, did you feel you had an affinity for physics and for science?
I was top boy in the class all the way. There was nobody near me.
And what were your favorite subjects?
Maths. In the year that I wrote mathematics, there was, you remember in South Africa, each province had its own structure. We fell under the Cape province because Worcester is in the Cape. Every single person who wrote matric, their teachers who taught them complained to the department that the standard of the examination was too high. The papers are full of it, of how it was. I got 97% for my English paper.
I got the other 6, that's all I got.
96, yes. I lost 4 points because I made a small slip somewhere.
Wow.
I've got 96. The next person who had any near intelligence had less than 70.
Unbelievable, Max.
And I had no problem with the papers.
And then what did you do after matric?
Straight to university.
You went to UCT?
My parents didn't know. In September, my parents couldn't afford it. University was an expensive business. In September of the year, don't forget we had a calendar year there. In September of the year, I wrote a letter, without my parents knowing them, I wrote a letter to the University of Cape Town applying for a bursary.
You did it yourself?
On my own. Nobody knew about it. Nothing happened until January. I thought that they ignored it. What they were doing, they were waiting to see what would happen to my mathematics. Because in September, we hadn't written our matric papers yet. You see, we wrote it in November.
Yeah.
So the university waited to see what I would do in those. And of course, there I did. For them, it was exceptionally well. And I was the only one who got any marks in the mathematics paper. So my mathematics paper was 296 out of 300.
So you got a couple of distinctions.
Yeah. And on that, the University of Cape Town gave me a scholarship for 3 years.
Wow.
For 3 years they gave it to me. So my parents said, my mother said, what's this? The university is writing to you. What's all this about? So it came out. I said, tell them it. I wrote to them and I passed. And this is a letter they said they gave me a scholarship. So my mother said, we'll accept the scholarship and we'll pay for your residence in Cape Town.
They must have been very proud of you.
They were delighted.
Makes it so
And as a result of me, my brother got into university without any problems.
And what did you start studying?
I always started the general thing. I wasn't interested in anything else. I started a wide general knowledge region I started. I didn't specialize at school.
Mm-hmm. And when you got to university?
Fellowship in science was even obvious. I did science for 3 years. I mean, when my fellowship lapsed after 3 years, I applied for a job at the university, and they gave me a job at £80 a month.
And you already got your degree?
And I took my master's degree at the same time. While I was working at the university.
In maths or in physics?
Mathematics, always mathematics.
Always mathematics.
Yeah. Then I got my master's degree at the University of Cape Town. Then they put me on the staff, and while I was on staff, I spent 3 years doing my PhD. First a master's degree, and then a PhD. And after PhD, I went out to work in the scientific area of South Africa. And 10 years later, I was given the Doctor of Science. It's the only degree that they've ever had in that period, and since then nobody's had another doctorate degree of science. It's a DSc that you gave me. So I've got a BHD, a MSc, a PhD, and a DSc. At the university, all of UCT. Yeah, I had a very good academic record.
And working for UCT on the staff.
I was working with all the people who were involved in scientific work, scientific research. I was involved.
And then Max, I know it might be, maybe I shouldn't be asking, but did you get involved with the nuclear, what was happening in South Africa with the nuclear activities, or Kuberg, or is that secretive?
That's a story as well.
Are you allowed
They
to
wanted
divulge?
me. They wanted me. I didn't like the people who were in charge. The people in charge were all high level in Afrikaans politics. They were all politicians with all, with the broederbond.
Yeah, that's a very.
And I said to myself, if anything goes wrong while I'm working there, I get the blame no matter what happens. I'm the Jew, this outsider. So I didn't take a job.
You didn't take the job.
I didn't take a job. I was actually working in the University of Stellenbosch at the time as a supervisor on the research department. And the head of the atomic energy came to Stellenbosch to speak to me, to try and get me to come and work there. And he gave me a complete invitation to get the job, and then he described everything and the salary and all that stuff. And I thought about it very, very deeply. And I turned around and said to him, I'm sorry, I can't take it. I've got a job here already.
You've got a job already?
Yes, I had a job in Stellenbosch. So I can't leave them at the job, and I can't take your job. And I did.
Even though it was a very prestigious
That is the reason that I gave them. But the main reason was I didn't want to be the only Jew working in the department.
You've got to have your head screwed on when you're Jewish.
That's quite amazing, but you gave up a very prestigious job.
So what?
Yeah.
I didn't need it. My work was prestigious enough to buy it for myself. It's the only university, the only degree since 1944 was the last PhD degree given, DSc given. The last one was 1944, and mine was given 26 years later. And none, since then, not another one.
And he married me, and I knew nothing about.
So, I mean, I had an academic record which was untouchable.
And when did you both meet? Because now
At university.
And Eunice, what were you studying?
She was going to do...
BA teaching.
And she used to walk past my chemistry department every morning, and I used to sit near the window inside at the lectures and watch her come past.
And I couldn't see him. I didn't know much about him.
I couldn't greet her or anything because I was sitting at the lecture. The lecture was going on.
He can say what he likes, but his mother was a joy. When I met your mother, I knew I liked her.
It's wonderful. So it's just wonderful. And Kate and Hori, you've both been married now for 71 years.
Already.
It's amazing. That's really...
Only 71.
So I just want to show, if we can just show, these are the pictures.
Those are Max's
of Max. If you could show the pictures of your parents.
Before they were married.
If you could hold this up.
Before they were married.
If you could hold this. Yeah.
Both of them.
And this was taken, obviously, in Lithuania.
In Lithuania. Before my father left for Europe.
And then Eunice, I'm going to give, these are your parents.
I don't have to be there.
No, it would be lovely to see
You
this.
didn't know him.
But this is wonderful to see. And this is your father and your mother.
Before they were married. Just before they were married.
And were they happy in South Africa, your parents?
They had to be, because they escaped from Russia.
Yeah, from Lithuania and from...
at that time they were in Russia during the war.
And Eunice, this is a picture of your parents?
They were married already.
They were married already. They had to wait a long time before they found a place to live.
These are priceless, these pictures.
Yeah.
They really are priceless. And when did your parents pass away?
I can't remember.
Had you already got your were they at your wedding?
Oh yes.
Oh yes,
We
long
already had
afterwards.
children.
My father was killed in a motor accident.
Oy.
A motor car ran into him, into his car, and he was killed. That happened while we were living in Worcester. He was driving his car in the area, and the car came out and hit him on the side, and he didn't recover.
And your mother, she...
My mother managed to live to run the business and after this on her own for quite a long time.
And then after you were married, where did you live?
Mainly Cape Town,
And were you still associated with the university?
all the time. All the time.
Mainly with UCT or with Stellenbosch?
Both. They had an agreement to do with the higher level to the university with Cape Town and Stellenbosch were mixing in the people all together. They used to work on the same basis. You had Stellenbosch people working in Cape Town and Cape Town people working in Stellenbosch. And I had access to both Cape Town and Stellenbosch.
And Eunice, were you working as well?
She was
I
teaching.
was teaching. Primary school teaching. I knew nothing about what he was doing, and I still don't know a damn.
And in which school did you teach? Which school?
I was at Cape Town High at first, and then I moved to Herzliya.
And what did you teach? Which
Children.
subjects? General subjects? You taught general?
English,
English.
Mainly.
mainly.
And then this is Max, because you are a man of many, many, many interests and fascinations. When did you get involved with stamps?
At the age of 6.
At the age of 6?
Yes. At the age of 6, I took stamps and I pasted them in a used exercise book.
Was this still in Lithuania or
In Cape Town.
You had already come
Actually,
to-
we were
you had
living in
used
Worcester. In
stamps.
Worcester. This is in Worcester.
You just
I
came to
started
South
in,
Africa, and your fascination with stamps was from the age of 6?
Oh yes, but all that was
So Max, this is a picture of you and your father Chaim,
on his lap, yes.
and this is in 1928.
Yes.
This was shortly before he left for South Africa.
Yeah. This was just before he left for South Africa.
And on the next page you have a wonderful picture of your parents again and your grandparents.
This is my mother and father just before they were married. This is my grandparents.
And you named after your grandfather.
Pardon?
You named after your grandfather.
Yes.
Who's in the picture?
Mordecai.
My Hebrew name is Mordechai. One name.
Wow, it's very special. It's So Max, that's wonderful. So I just want to ask, so what the original stamps, what made you decide to put the stamps in the album?
I like to collect stamps, and I didn't know what to do with them. I couldn't read. So I put them, and it's all the same stamp. It was, don't forget, during those times it was wartime, and it was war stamps in South Africa when I started collecting. It was 1932, it was really getting into the war.
And your father, did he collect or anybody?
No, nobody collected in the family. I started a brand new thing.
And he was
But
the
in
only
1936, I scrapped everything beforehand and started scratch. Why? Because the British stamps started in 1936 because you had a new king coming on, Edward.
Yeah. And what did you start collecting?
I collected the same as before all the time. The British Empire, South African British Empire. Nothing else.
And when the State of Israel was established, you didn't?
I started State of Israel straight away.
Also.
As soon as I had the opportunity to get the stamps. And of course, in those days, I didn't have money to buy stamps, so my early part of Israel is very poorly represented in my collection. I didn't have the money because that first steps were very expensive.
Yeah.
They still are.
And your fascination, not only your fascination, your...
My knowledge of the stamps, that's what got me everywhere. That's not my...
And Max, your fascination with stamps and collecting stamps, did you...
It came by itself.
And you did you attend any other clubs or did you join any societies?
Not immediately, no. I was a kid, I started at 6. Nobody took me seriously.
And with the other friends of yours that were also collecting at one time, or was it very...
I can't tell. I didn't... In those days, I took every stamp that I could get. I had... There was war stamps in South Africa. And I had pages and pages of the same stamp. I didn't know how to differentiate between stamps. I had to learn this as I went along.
And you just collected? You kept
I just accumulated the stamps.
And with your friends, did you swap any ever, or did you...
Well, they would talk about this sometimes. It may have been, I don't know, but it wasn't serious.
And you kept on collecting from then on?
Absolutely never changed.
Did you ever go to the post offices and get the first issues?
Of course. When I used to be in Worcester, when I used to come to Worcester to visit my parents, we lived in Pretoria after we were married.
Okay, and what year did you get married?
You know what?
60.
In 1960.
1960.
And in which synagogue?
Where would you get married? In Gardens.
In Sea Point.
Sea Point.
In the
Sea Point,
the Murray Road?
Yes, Murray Road, Sea Point.
My aunt lived in Sea Point, so we used her premises, and yes, she was near the Sea Point shul.
Oh, very nice. And then you decided to move to Pretoria?
We already had thought about living in Pretoria by then already. We had thought about it before we got married.
And what did you do in Pretoria?
We lived there.
But where did you work?
I worked at the CSR.
That was after we were married?
Yes.
Yes.
And could you explain for our viewers?
I was in charge of a division in there.
So if you could explain for our viewers what the CSIR is?
It's the government established organisation which dealt with the technical parts of science, and it was intended to serve the technical industries.
And for how many years did you work at the CSIR?
All my life.
All your life. Till you came to Israel?
Yes, till I retired.
And Max, you had a study year in England?
Studied all over the world.
Isn't that in his book?
You gave lectures when you were in Pretoria, did you give any lectures at Wits University? Or
No, not in university. I gave lectures to the groups of people that came to the administrative part of Pretoria. They used to have invitations up to 30 to 40 people coming periodically from the industry and so on to get contact with the educational. But I was in the education department.
And you took a sabbatical,
Yes.
And you went to England to...
where did I go for sabbatical, John? It was in
Pretoria.
But you
wasn't in Pretoria.
You spent a year in England?
It was in England.
In England.
And was that a good experience going to England?
It was very good, useful for me, very useful for me.
Yeah.
Because I learned the scientific structure in England was totally different from that in South Africa. And I learned what they were doing there very well. It was important for me to know that.
And were you associated with any universities in England when you went?
Not officially, but privately, yes, often.
Sure, that's very interesting. And you're also involved in many different cases. There was the arsenic case.
Well, when they needed a legal person, where I lived, the police department where I lived got to know me so well that whenever there was something legal, they called me.
Did you have to appear in court
Yes,
as an expert witness?
If I had to. I didn't like to, but I had to.
There was a very famous, a few legal cases with arsenic and...
Yeah, well, if I was involved, then I had to give evidence.
Wow. And you also were involved with many things, archaeological studies.
They came to me when they found that I was working there, because they needed the advice, because I'd been to England and I had the contact there, so it's helped them when I came back to South Africa and do the same thing here. Yeah.
And
I knew nothing about it.
And let me just ask, you had your eldest child is...
Our oldest daughter were twins. Our oldest children were twins.
The twins.
Girls.
Twin girls.
And how many children?
You got 4.
And
the twins and a boy and a girl.
And where do the
girl
twins live? Where do they?
The one lives in Beersheba, and the other twin lives in England.
Ah, in England, sure.
Yeah.
Canada.
In Canada.
In Canada she lives.
Wow. But you have 3 children living here in Israel.
Pardon?
3 of your children live in Israel.
2 children live?
3 children live in Israel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rhoda's in
Rhoda and
Jonathan. And Jonathan I know from many years ago from B'nai Kiva.
Right.
And Max, during this time, how did you manage to, with all your work and raising a family, your hobby with stamps?
Always.
It never interfered.
No.
Did you find it very relaxing looking at your stamps and
I
getting
didn't
involved?
look at it that way. I didn't look at it as a relaxing thing. I looked at it because the stamps needed attention.
But you had a very supportive wife. Eunice, you were a very supportive wife.
I had to be, or else I'd be divorced. It was either one or the other.
But you encouraged Max.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
It's wonderful. And Max, with the stamps, you did a lot of research as well.
Yes. You can't work with stamps without... Look, when I say dealt with stamps, it wasn't just a case of accumulating them. It was getting totally involved in the stamps. The result was that I was very often called in on expert committees by the philatelic organizations in South Africa to give my opinion about what's going on in certain collections, because it was a high level, my collection was a high level.
And what was your collection?
My collection was the stamps of South Africa. I got 3 collections. South Africa, Israel and England. The English collection was only during the reign of George VI. So it started in 1936 and ended in 52. There are no more stamps that were issued after 52 that were in that collection. Of course, the collection continued. I mean, I kept on getting stamps and adding. I didn't mean I didn't close the collection, but I didn't get any stamps that were outside that period. That was the English stamps. The South African stamps were in South Africa until they switched the running of the South African post office, and it was all Afrikaans and all the Afrikaners using their techniques and so on, and I didn't like the way they supplied me with new stamps, and I didn't like the way the stamps had lost their character. So I stopped that in 2008. I stopped collecting South Africa. But Israel was from 1948 unstopped up to now.
And did you ever exhibit your collections?
Preferably not, but sometimes I did on 2 and 3 occasions, I think.
And you obtained very high awards?
No, we didn't worry about awards. We didn't worry, it was just...
But Max, you were on how many different philatelic organizations? Or which societies were you active in?
I was active in every society that I went to. In Cape Town, it was the Cape Town Royal Society, but I wasn't a member. I was never paid dues there. But I had access to that completely. I mean, everybody knew that I had that. Then I had, in Pretoria, well, I had contact with the collectors in Pretoria when I lived there. And that was it.
And SIP or Casper?
They were a nice batch of
All of them. Certainly Casper.
That's the Society of Israel
and the societies in Pretoria. In Pretoria there's several societies. And it's only the Afrikaans Society that didn't really include me as a member. Frankly enough, I didn't have enough time to go to them.
And you were very instrumental, and I think at this point I just want to show, because it's something absolutely extraordinary. I'll just how did you get involved in DISA 1979? Because that was a very, I'm just going to come into the picture and I want to show something very special, Max, because this is really something, Eunice, I'll just show over here, if you can, or I'll just go over here for 1 second. So this is Eunice, I don't know if you remember as well, but this was the DISA 1979 International Stamp Exhibition, which was held at the Cape Hope Centre.
Yes.
And it was from the 30th of March to the 7th of April. And I exhibited Postal History of Jerusalem, and I was very fortunate to get the Jerusalem prize from Teddy Kollek. And here we have the chairman of the exhibition, Max Peisach, and the chairman of the jury, and you signed the certificate.
I was also, I was not the chair, I was on the jury as well.
So Max, how did you get involved with DISA 79? Because to have an international stamp exhibition in South Africa, specializing in Israel, is quite a unique undertaking and a very special event that you had.
Well, I insisted on that. No, but the point is that when I joined the Philatelic Society in Cape Town, they immediately recognized me as an authority in my field. My field was modern King George VI stamps of South Africa. That was collection I collected up to 2008. From 1935 or so, something like that. But up to 2008, there I cancelled my subscription to South African Philatelic Services.
And you were on the board of the expert committee for the South African Philatelic Federation?
No, not as such. But I was on the juries when they had panels of juries. I was on that.
That's an invited.
Yes.
One's invited.
Yes.
And to become the organizer of this exhibition, I mean the chairman of the exhibition, it's an incredible undertaking what you did. You had international exhibitors from all over the world.
That's right.
At DISA, and was a very, very successful exhibition.
Yes. But I had more than one exhibition that I was chairman of.
Which other exhibitions?
Also, they were all in Cape Town. Cape Town had exhibitions roughly every 2 or 3 years.
And internationals?
All internationals. All at the high level.
And you have the distinction of being the youngest signatory to the Royal.
Yes, I know.
It was for the Distinguished Philatelist.
I was not
the Royal of Honor.
I was not 40 years old. I was still
the youngest person.
How old were you?
Before 40, the Royal of Distinguished Philatelist.
Mm-hmm.
The Royal of Distinguished Philatelist.
Yes,
you were the youngest.
I was the youngest signatory of that. Not the earliest. The Royal started in 1920s, when I wasn't around.
Eunice, you must be very proud of your husband. It's an amazing achievement. And
I'm very proud of her. Whatever I did in my field, she did in hers.
Come on.
But it's wonderful to see how you supported each other and how because you have such a tremendous love for everything that you do, but also for the stamps.
Yeah.
I've taken you to
He
exhibitions
has
here in
a
Israel.
most amazing mother.
I think that's
You did.
Yes.
very supportive.
And what do you?
My mother was very
wonderful
supportive of me as well.
Mother, grandmother, and anytime I said something, you're right. You're the mother. You're the grandmother. And off she backtracked.
Wow.
She was wonderful. And my mother wasn't so bad either.
It's really lovely.
Had sense.
Okay. So Max and Eunice, when you were in Pretoria
Yeah.
and you were raising a family, were you very involved with the Jewish community in
Yeah.
Pretoria?
Yeah. When they called parents of children who were becoming the age of scholars, they called me and a friend of mine, Percy Schwartz, who now lives in Australia, to come to these meetings. And there I played my role.
Wasn't it at a shul, the announcement was made that they were going to enforce Christian
At that stage, they were, the education department of Pretoria, the public education, was contemplating joining up with the Afrikaans political groups,
Okay.
and that would have been very bad for Israel, for the Jews. So I insisted we have a Jewish school.
So you were one of the
He
founders
was
of
one of
COM.
the first who
I
stood
started
up.
it.
You, I think, stood, and another man stood up in shul, and from that
Percy
time-
Schwartz and I were we once stood up at the meeting.
And was this the main shul with Rabbi Katz?
Yes.
And it was a
Yeah.
Friday night meeting, and you and
They had the
stood
meeting
up,
there, and then
and they started.
and I stood up and I said, "You need. I've got 2 children going to school." And Percy Schwartz stood up and said, "And I've got one as well, so we can start the school."
And that's how you started the
Yes,
school in
we were the
Pretoria.
first registrations at the school in Pretoria.
Wow.
I remember that. I remember seeing you stand up. Yeah.
Sure. And for your work, you went to many different countries in Europe.
Practically every year. An overseas trip to Europe or anywhere else. Practically every year I was away from South Africa for some time.
And did you have to give lectures, or you were giving me advice to the different companies?
We spoke to each other. It wasn't formal lectures. I just spoke to the scientists there. I was involved with theirs work.
And Eunice, could you ever join?
No,
No.
always on
You
my
went
own.
by yourself. You went to the PSU laboratory in Saclay,
Yes.
and
No, I was working.
and you were in Athens and in Paris and in many different
All
countries
over the
all over. In Toronto,
Yes,
you went to.
Yes, practically all over the world.
I was with you in
All over the world
And-
that was involved in the modern techniques of science.
In Toronto, you spent time in '84 in Toronto as
Yes.
well,
Yes. On my way back from Europe.
and even China. You were in China.
Yes. Special invitation.
Max, that's and Hungary '93.
Yes.
That's amazing, and even you went to Ghent in Belgium. That was in '82 as well.
Yeah.
And coming from South Africa, because this was still under apartheid South Africa,
yes.
was that an issue or a problem?
Politically it was, but for me individually it wasn't.
And you always were well respected.
When I went, I got everything, a red carpet all the way.
And you made many friends when you went on these different
Absolutely.
visits?
I made a point of speaking well with all the scientists working there. That I actually made a point of doing that.
Of doing what?
To make contact with the scientists working that I went to.
And in 95, on St. Valentine's Day, on the 14th of February 1995, you decided to come to Israel, and you came straight to Beersheba.
Yes.
What made you decide to come to Beersheba in the Negev?
Beersheba had your technical departments. We had the part of me talking. The teaching part of science was here.
So were you associated with Ben Gurion University?
Indirectly, always indirectly.
But you had Lynn living here as well.
Of course, my
And your
daughter
was living here.
family were living here.
And Max, I'm sure everybody's asked you, Beersheba is very close to Dimona,
Yeah.
where they have the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
But you had an indirect connection
Dimona
there
was,
as well.
was very indirect. I didn't want to work there because everything was hush hush, and I didn't want to get involved in that kind of work.
But you had some indirect
Oh
contact.
yes.
And would they ask for your advice?
They don't ask for advice directly. They invite you to come and visit the labs.
And that is a big honor. It's a big honor, and it's an amazing. And you're coming to Israel in '95, Eunice and Max.
That was when we came to live here.
Yeah. Are you happy with your decision coming to live in
Yes,
Israel?
absolutely. From the moment we came here.
And I remember I took you to a stamp exhibition. I think it was in Jerusalem we had a stamp exhibition, and it was so nice. We took you, and I've seen you through the years, and you've always kept your tremendous interest in philately.
Absolutely.
With a side effect, his family also came into play.
Yeah, of course, I wouldn't ignore my family.
Wow,
You
that's
better say it.
so.
No,
Max
but
and Eunice,
my best thing was that in the end of my academic connection with the universities, I was awarded the DSc, and the only person since then, the previous person had been 40 years earlier. I was number 4 in the list to get that thing, and since then there's been nobody else. That was in 1971.
It's amazing. So I just want to thank you both. I'm just going to come into. This has been really special.
Would you like something to
No,
drink?
Eunice, I'll just show you. It's just wonderful to. This is 2 books that you both brought out, and Max, yours is My Life on 3 Continents, and this is when you got your PhD.
Yes.
And you've got such a lovely saying here: every man's life is a fairy tale written by God's fingers, by Hans Christian Andersen. And Eunice, here's your Down Memory Lane as well, a beautiful book that you both have done. But I just want to wish you both only Mazel and Brocha, and
We have had up to
and may Vestrim till 120 in only good health, and you should just have nachas from your children. And Max, you are an inspiration to all of us, and Eunice as well. And if you could sit as well, Eunice, with your dear husband.
And what do you do?
That's not. I do dentistry, but I'm more interested in just hearing stories like
in other
yours.
people.
If we can take a seat, Eunice, you and Max, really, I just want to mention you are both such a tremendous inspiration to all of us. Being married for 71 years, I have to ask you both, what would you say is how would your advice to young couples, or what is the secret basically of your success to be happily
Choose your
married for
partner.
over 71 years?
You must choose your partner correctly.
What's it?
You mustn't just grab at a woman when you want to marry. You must choose your partner correctly. We were together for a long time before we were married. About 2 or 3 years we were already going around together. And I knew her very well by the time we got married.
And you knew my mother and I knew your parents.
Yes.
And it was just a friendship that developed.
But what is your the keys, or what is your advice for a successful marriage and a successful life? Because you both epitomize that. You really do.
To respect each other.
Yeah.
To respect each other's work. I didn't ever complain about his having to work, or if I did, it was in a jokey way, because I realized that Max's work meant a lot to him, and he knew that I liked teaching, and that I'd have time, I needed time to prepare and mark, and we gave each other time. And also, I had a mother who was married for only 16 years before my father died. And he died while we lived in a town in the Transvaal, which was very, very hot during the summer months. And my father would not allow us to stay there because of the danger of malaria.
Which town was it?
It's to stay in our house over the summer period.
But what was the name of the town?
It was near Barberton. And he used to make her go away, would spend about 3 months in the Transvaal, higher up, which was not so bad for the health. And it was while we were away that he died after 16 years of marriage. Your parents were married for a long time.
Yeah.
And they were happily married.
Yeah, very, very
Very
happily married. And he was, and that just became an important part of life for me. And I had a husband whose work I never understood. I never tried to understand it. I said, and that was it.
And Eunice, you encouraged Max to pursue his hobby, philately?
You try not to. You know, there are times when a person has to be adult and say, okay, that's his nonsense. But I was busy with children, I was busy with after school arrangements, there were all sorts of things.
But I just want to mention, Max, to be invited to sign that roll of honor, to be the youngest signatory, and to be invited onto the jury.
I wasn't 40 yet.
It's a tremendous honor.
It was.
So
But he
many
was
people
knowledgeable.
they dream of one day being on a jury. It's
But
not
he
a
was
given.
knowledgeable.
It's not the jury.
We used to meet
It's a book that you sign.
I know, but you were also on the jury.
Oh yes, the jury but the jury depends on the jury committee.
I know, but to serve on a jury and to
Yeah.
serve.
But
And to,
every Sunday evening they used to sign your study circle,
My study
your
circle.
philatelic study circle used to meet at our place. And I could see the interest and the attention that they each gave to each other, and it was wonderful.
it's so lovely to hear that.
It was wonderful to see. I had no time for that.
But you
But I respected the fact that he liked it and he did it, and people came, and they were also busy with it. It was lovely to see them.
Sure, it's
There were
wonderful.
people among them who were not all that bright, but who liked collecting, and who could speak about their collections. It was wonderful to see. And nobody laughed at them about the way they were doing it, because there were all kinds of ways to collect. And everybody explained it, and it was marvelous. I used to love those meetings that you had on a Sunday. It was wonderful to see, and I'm thinking of a couple of the people among them who was not over bright, and they were all enjoying it and all having a wonderful time, and being made to feel that they were worth something because of the way they were collecting. It was terrific. It was a wonderful education for me.
So it's true, just as a stamp.
To see the ways that people collected. It wasn't all one way. It wasn't Max's way only. You collected according to your mentality and your understanding and your ability and your money. The money to buy.
But you can, from used stamps, you can build up a beautiful collection. And,
Yeah.
and they say
Yeah.
just as stamps cross oceans and seas.
Yeah.
So it really, it unifies people, it unifies nations. And we see it so much. With,
That's right.
I have 3 collections of stamps. South Africa, Israel, and for a limited period, Great Britain.
And you've always kept, you've never decided you want to sell them, or you...
No, selling is not my business.
And you never did it for the money, you did it for the love of the stamps. And Max...
And that sometimes got me because it was going out, money was going out and not staying in.
So I just want to show for our viewers here, this is so dear to me, from Diza 79 for the Postal History of Jerusalem and the Teddy Kalak Award, with your signature, Max, as the chairman of the exhibition. And this really, looking back on Diza 79, it must have been an amazing feeling knowing that you had helped with this international exhibition in Cape Town, which was such a tremendous success.
You know?
Yeah, because it wasn't only the exhibition, I was actively on the jury.
And you had world-class exhibitors and world-class exhibitions.
World-class.
That will stand out as one of the finest. And to have an exhibition, and you can see it with the Doivri. It was Israel, South Africa joint, and Diza. It was part of the Israeli Philatelic Society.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
It's really remarkable. It is absolutely remarkable. And the people you must have met, the giants, you must have really associated with the giants of philately in South Africa.
But only those who came within reach of Cape Town. The ones who were overseas, I didn't have much time to see them. When I used to go overseas, I used to make a point of seeing them, but it was just an occasional meeting.
Who stands out in your mind of the giants of South African philately?
What's that?
Who stands out as the greats of South African philately?
It's not the people, it's the collection. The collections are...
the idols.
And sometimes the collections are very good, and sometimes the collections are not so secondary.
You were close with the idols.
Oh, very much, both of them.
Yeah.
She loved children, and so we used to haul out
very often it's us to go out to them on the weekend.
Well, you must continue collecting, and you must just get nachas from your family and being in Israel, and to see you both so happily after 71 years. It is really, it is heartwarming.
I can't remember most of it. That is all.
No, it's wonderful. It's really lovely.
I want to tell you, memory was a wonderful thing.
No, it still is. It's been the greatest honor and privilege to be with you both in your home in Beersheba, and just hearing your stories has been.
Now, what are you going to do with the story? You're not going.
I want everybody to see it because it is so remarkable. Eunice and Max, thank you so very, very much.
Delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
It was lovely speaking to you. How are you, and you are married? Happily.
Thank God, thank God.
Thank God.
And I'll just end off by just mentioning that I met my wife after 3 weeks. We decided to get married.
Wow!
Please God, it's going on for...
we were going steady for at least 2.5 years, maybe going on for 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful.
We were both students. I knew that my mother wouldn't be able to afford a wedding, so we postponed it.
Well, thank God you have a happy marriage, and it's just been such a wonderful evening, and I'm so grateful to you both.
What we are very proud of are our children. They are all very successful in everything they've done. Every single one of them, all 4 of them.
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. And
And-
they're very proud of their parents.
And we're proud of them and their children.
It's
Because
wonderful.
the children are up on the wall, most of them.
That's wonderful. You should just have nachas and only good health.
And you
I'd-
too.
Till 100, at Maybest 120.
What are you
and
going
all
to
the
do
best.
with the information you got?
We will treasure it. Eunice, thank you so much.